acknowledging God is present every time and every place, let us acknowledge that indeed God is present now. And in that awareness, let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks. We give thanks for all that is and all that isn't. All that was and all that wasn't. All that will be and all that won't be. We give thanks. As we open ourselves to the awareness of your presence in our lives, we see that divine order is unfolding. We recognize the opportunities for us to learn. We recognize the opportunities for us to celebrate. And we give thanks. Allowing our hearts to open to the circumstances in the moment. We embrace each and every one who comes into our company. We see them as this Christ light, expressing however they choose, but knowing the reality of who they are. And we give thanks. And for those in our experience who do not yet seem to understand that they are the Christ, we embrace them, we lift them, we see them transformed by the awareness of your love moving through them. And we give thanks. And for this realization of your presence in our lives, together we say, Amen. Love Actually. How many of you saw the movie? I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, something like that. Maybe it's longer ago than that. But it was a depiction of several different scenarios of relationships and the realization of love in its various forms. Well, we are in the Advent season, and as I have said, the Advent season is often celebrated with those characteristics of consciousness, of faith and peace and love and joy. In unity, we tend to break those apart, although it is in reality an understanding that they are woven together into a very close-knit fabric. So we have talked about faith and peace. Today we're going to be talking about love. And so why is love important in the realization of what we in unity consider to be the arising of the Christ in our awareness, the arising of the Christ light in us? In fact, that's really the celebration of our candle lighting service coming up on Christmas Eve, is the arising of the Christ light in each of us. So in unity, that is the birth of the Christ in us. And why is it important for love to be realized, for us to accomplish, to experience that arising of the Christ light in us? Please, I offer you the opportunity to deliver my talk for me. Why is it important? Rose.
Because that light will lift others and maybe bring some peace. Be inspired by your light.
So the offering of love to that other is perhaps, not necessarily, but perhaps opening the door for them for the realization of that love within them. And in that process, opening themselves up to the birth of the Christ in them. Okay? And keep in mind that when we say the birth of the Christ in us, it is a latent Christ that we're talking about. It's not an absent Christ. It's not about Christ coming into us, but rather it's the Christ arising in our awareness that is already there. Anyone else?
David, could you repeat that question, please? I was looking at something and I missed the beginning of it.
Would you put your cell phone down, please? You cannot Google, why is love important? The question is, why is love important in the awareness of the arising of the Christ light in us? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Oh, that's I'm processing based on going the exact wording. To me, there are so many earthly circumstances that are trials that really throw me off center and make it difficult for me to function or difficult for me to sleep. If I can access that loving aspect, the Christ light, and it could be called by many different names, if I can get to that more eternal spot of love and peace, that is the way I can transcend all those other things and resolve them. But while I'm out here in the mix, it just gets crazy if I'm making myself clear.
Well, so the arising of, or the realization of the love and the expression of the love is an opportunity to transcend the stuff that we encounter. And transcend is, you also use the word resolve, transcend and resolve. And that's interesting, that the awareness of love is part of the resolution of the stuff that we encounter that can be challenging. Thank you. There was, Glenn.
I was going to say, that love is the one source of all good. That's why it's important.
Okay. All right. Okay, love is the one source of all good. Yes.
Love is joy for all the right, like an expectation. If you love gives you joy, if with the right expectations, if you're relying on your trust of the world, it's going to throw you left and right and left. You have a difference between receiving and accepting. If you accept and receive the grace that everything God's given you, just the gratitude for being is immense than just accepting it and hoping for it.
Now, I'm not going to repeat everything you've said, but what I drew from that, the image that I drew from that is that love is the ballast that keeps the ship upright and properly into the wind, even with the storms that rage around us. Is that a fair?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I said, I felt it, but I'm going, okay, can I repeat that?
Yes, ma'am.
To me, it's just love is healing. It's healing for me, and it's healing when I'm healed. It heals others too. When you spread it around, you know.
How do you experience love? How do you experience love? Is it an intellectual exercise? Is it an intellectual experience? Huh?
Hugs. Yeah.
Hugs, yes. Yeah, hugs are great because it requires two to hug, right? All right. Well, at least exchange hug. So,
Go within. It comes from within.
Okay. In our writers group, we have expressed ourselves from the core of our insides. And the love that comes out in that group is that's our way of expressing it.
wow, what's the experience like?
It's like a soul connection.
A soul connection.
It's a feeling that you just know that you're both one in Christ, or one in,
I
you're
know what
right,
said.
you express it better than we.
No,
we know what
but-
we're feeling, we just don't know how to express it.
But feeling was the word that I was
Right,
looking
yes,
for.
right.
It's a feeling experience. It's a felt experience, right? It's not an intellectual experience. It's not a logical experience. It is a felt experience. And the interesting thing about love is that when we remember a loving experience, we are experiencing that again. We're feeling that again. And as I've said before, the wonderful, magical thing about feeling is that it can only be experienced in the now. We can remember how we felt, but only if we feel that right now, right? And feeling is a wonderful way of bringing us back into the present. And in the courageous conversations that we had a week and a half ago, we focused on our feelings, how we were feeling about what someone said. And so the feeling nature of love is a magical process of bringing us into the moment. Excuse me. I'm glad vodka does not have a color to it. So, there's in the Washington Post, there was an article this week about a fellow, Paul, I think it's pronounced Getches. Paul Getches, retired engineer, and he was looking for ways to serve. And I know many of you, I'm a little bit too hot. I know many of you, maybe I should unbutton my collar. Many of you have these activities that you're involved in, but Paul was looking for something to give back, and he saw a notice in on a website of I think it's called On Point, but it was a website where low-income students could seek rides to and from college. Now you may think, well, that's kind of weird. I mean, they go to college and then they come home. It wasn't a daily thing, but it was rides to go for Christmas holidays or to show up at school to begin with, where students would receive, low-income students would receive perhaps a scholarship, but one of the major problems that they had was getting from their home to the school. So this website is a place where people can go to seek rides, and people can go to offer rides. Well, Paul Getches had made contact with this website, and he engaged one of the students, took the student a 3-hour ride from their home to college, and he enjoyed it so much that he went back and did it again. Well, here is Paul is the fellow on the back, as you might guess. He says, "I just love driving, and I love these kids. There are programs for everything, and I'm not really a program man, but I like to drive, and it's such a blessing and a privilege to be part of these kids' lives, even just for a few hours, getting to know them and hearing their stories." So here's a fellow that is volunteering, and he has, over the course of the last 8 years, he has driven some 64,000 miles in offering low-income students a ride to and from college. Holidays, semester end, semester quarter ends, and so on. So I offer you a quick trick question. Is what he is doing an expression of unconditional love?
Yes.
How do you know?
It's giving back outside of himself to further someone else.
Now, he also in this article, this is in a Washington Post article 3 or 4 days ago. Also in this article, it tells that he, if there's a meal, breakfast or lunch or dinner, he'll pay for it, and so he stops along the way to eat. So the question, I'll say again, is that unconditional love? And how do we know? I suggest that he might, in fact, be getting something from that experience. If he's getting something from that experience, is it unconditional love or is it conditional love? That is to say, if he no longer got what he is getting, Chris.
He's not expecting anything back. He's doing it out of the goodness of his heart.
How do you know that?
Because he tells us that, because that's what he's doing, and he's not asking for anything back. What he is getting back is the satisfaction of knowing he's done something to help someone else.
Okay. And I'll ask the question again. How do you know that?
Isn't it a natural occurrence that as you give, you receive anyway? So, I don't know if you knew that or not, but that's what's going on.
When I said this was a trick question, I offer you this as a possible answer. That we don't know whether it's unconditional love or not, because only the person who is giving it knows, right? If it's unconditional love, then it means that the love will be given regardless of the outcome. Love will be given regardless of whether or not I receive an expected reward. Love is unconditional only if we are willing to give it without any expectation of return. None. Zero. Zip. Nada. No return. If we are willing to give love unconditionally, we give love and we step away from it. We don't look for the bounce back. We don't look for the feedback. We don't look for the rewards. We don't look for anything to come back. It's unconditional. Now, there is conditional love. And conditional love is something that we're all familiar with. Conditional love is this. What? Conditional love is this. It's transactional. I'll love you if. How many of you have ever experienced conditional love? What? Are your arms not working? Each of us has experienced conditional love. It's transactional love. It's love that is based upon, okay, I love you if you take me out to dinner. Or I'll love you if you wash my car. It's transactional love, and that is oftentimes something that we confuse with unconditional love. Unconditional love is that love which we do not expect anything in return. We give it because it is the giving that is our gift. So, over the course of the last several weeks, I've brought up this slide where this was offered by Jane and Gary Simmons. They're co-ministers at a ministry in Spokane, Washington. And they talk about translational versus transformational. The translational teachings are those that are intended to improve or translate a moment from a difficulty or hardship to an opportunity or to something to leverage within the context of creating a more favorable experience. And so translational is about shifting a particular moment. It is focused on creating a more enhanced, confident, empowered, and authentic self-system. Translational teachings are ego-friendly insofar as they do not alter the ego's functional role in one's consciousness. So there are those transformational teachings, and then there are there's translational teachings. There's transformational teachings seek to point us to a new reality that's only accessible within the context of a new identity. When we were talking about shadow work, I mentioned that oftentimes it is through the work of those aspects of consciousness that we have buried, ignored, denied in our shadow, as Jung would put it, that are necessary for us to come into this new identity. Transformational teachings wreak havoc for the ego because their focus is not about survival or making things better. They point us away from the familiar and compel us to embrace the disowned and disorphaned parts of ourselves. These teachings are more difficult to engage because our ego tends to undermine any intentional effort to explore our own interiors and face our own demons. Now, I have gone ahead to, I was looking at this week, and I realized that these are not all of the types of teachings that we encounter. There's also the transactional teachings, and these teachings are those that are intended to transfer skills in pursuit of specific worldly functions. These may range from specific functional objectives, such as adding or welding, to more esoteric thought skills, such as philosophy or political science. In each case, the student likely expects specific outcomes of the teaching to improve his or her skill set. So we have the transactional, we have the translational, and we have the transformational teachings. And the reason that I revisited this is because I saw that there is also a parallel in love. There is transactional love, we just talked about. There's translational love, and there is transformational love. And last week I mentioned, you may know that I often come in with an outline, brief as it might be, and then take off wherever I need to go. And for demonstration of which is the order of slides have changed since 10 minutes ago. So we have transactional love, we have translational love, and we have transformational love. Now, what is it? And I gave the answer last week, so those of you who weren't here last week, don't feel like you're missing out, or that because I've already given the answer. But what is an example of translational love? Translational love is translating a moment. It is taking a moment that is not the way we might like it to be, and it corrects it. What would be an example of translational love? Love that we receive. So we are going about doing our business. We have a thing at work, and one of our peers at work comes down on us for something that happened, and we're not feeling good about it, and we're bitchy about it when we get home, and our significant other is there to offer us love. And that love that we receive, that support that we receive in that moment, allows us to let go of our anger, to let go of our stuff that we dug up today, and translate the moment, right? So we have this love that we receive as an example of translational love. And then we have the love that transforms. And the love that transforms is this unconditional love, this love that we give without any expectation of return. The transformational love that I'm talking about is the love that Jesus offered when he was asked by one of his... Come on. Why am I guess my battery is now dead. Could you give me a slide, please, or 2 slides, I think? Are we frozen?
Just goes up. That receiver's not showing right now. Behind the screen.
Can you give me a slide?
It's frozen.
Are we frozen?
It's changing a mic.
In Matthew 22, verses 34 to 40, Jesus was approached by a Pharisee who was a lawyer, and he was, the text goes that he was trying to trap Jesus in, and so he asked, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus said, there are 2. Love God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God with all your heart. To me, what he is saying is love God unconditionally. Love all that is. Love it all that isn't. Love all that will be and won't be. Love all that was and love all that wasn't, because it's all God. And so loving God with all your heart is to love regardless of what's going on. It's to love regardless of what you get back. It's to love in spite of all of the evidence to the contrary that you should be loving in this moment. It's loving unconditionally. And when Jesus said, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, what I'm seeing is that what he's saying is that you express love without any expectation of return. And in that process of expressing love without any expectation of return, that is transformational. That is the way that we allow ourselves to open up to the glory of all that is, all that isn't, all that will be and all that won't be, all that was and all that wasn't. Can you grok that? Can you get a sense of how important that is for us to become aware that we are divine beings in the expression in this moment? We are truly divine beings. That Christ is within us, and it is up to us to be an expression of that. All it takes is to express it, to know that we are God in this moment. We are God's fingertips. We are God's tongue. We are God's ears. We are God's legs. We are God in expression when we choose to be. Too often we get hung up on this I'm not worthy stuff. Have you ever felt that? Okay. Those of you that didn't respond, I'm assuming that you were asleep with your eyes open. But we are all God in expression when we choose to be. But we can choose to be only when we are aware that we have that potential. And we are aware when we have that potential by being love without condition, love in expression, wholehearted, every soul, every aspect of our being. We're expressing love unconditionally. So there is the transactional love. I'll love you if. There's the translational love, the love that we receive. And there is a transformational love, and that is the love that we give unconditionally. And if we're not giving it unconditionally, it's transactional, right? If we're not giving love unconditionally, it's transactional. When we're not receiving love unconditionally, it's transactional. But when we're receiving love unconditionally, that translates the moment when we give love unconditionally, that is transformational. It lifts us. It transforms us. It causes our ego to have fits. The ego, by definition, that I'm using is that aspect of consciousness which insists upon separation from each other and from God. And so when we are loving unconditionally, A Course in Miracles says that just in the introduction, you don't have to read far. In the second paragraph, you can read that love is the antidote for fear. That there are two aspects. There are two aspects of experience. There's an aspect of love and there's an aspect of fear. But what is love is all-encompassing. Fear is merely a device that the ego uses to convince us that love is unwarranted. So, four years ago, I was presented with this scroll from the Drepung Gomang monks, an inspiration for living. People are unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Be successful anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build it anyway. If you find some serenity and happiness, others may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget it tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world your best anyway. And in the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Mother Teresa. So, loving unconditionally is that. Loving unconditionally is transforming. Loving unconditionally, listen to this, loving unconditionally is your choice. We'll have our meditation. As we come into our meditation, let us come in. I cast all my cares. As we rest in this moment, as we allow ourselves to acknowledge God's presence in this moment, let us open our hearts to what is. What does that feel like? To open our hearts to what is. The connectedness, the engagement, the realization of God's presence. Oftentimes that comes from looking into the eyes of a child, looking into the face of a pet, perhaps sitting on a mountaintop looking at a beautiful sunset. Whatever the form, allow that to be present now. Bring to mind that experience where unconditional love was realized. And feel how that feels. Allow that feeling to expand into every aspect of your consciousness. Allow that light of unconditional love to shine into the dark corners, to dissolve the shadows, to highlight the exhilaration of a loving life. Allow that unconditional love to fill you, to exude from you, to spill into this moment, to touch each and every one in this moment. Allow that love to expand beyond any boundaries, covering the planet, touching each and every sentient being, even those you disagree with. Allow that love to flow and feel how that feels. Commit that felt sense to memory. As you're able to identify that sense of unconditional love, you can use it in each and every moment to recall it, to re-experience it, to make this moment loving again, and to make this moment loving again. Let this recollection of unconditional love be a habit that you form, a habit that you engage daily, hourly, minute by minute. Let this experience of unconditional love heal the wounds that have occurred, heal relationships that have been ripped asunder, heal the worldview where there once existed enemies and now exist only met and unmet friends. As you walk through your life today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day, as you walk through your life, allow this unconditional love to be exuded through you. Allow it to engage each and every person you encounter. Let this unconditional love be you in expression, because you are God in expression right now. Breathing in and breathing out, incorporating that experience into the very essence of who you are. Be the love. Be the love. And as we come back into this time, into this space, let us come back sharing the words of Alleluia.